Well, so the exciting thing about being a part of the ECIC is that all we do is rest of Africa. So it's wonderful to be a part of the development and to play a role in I guess, making a difference on the continent. This forum is very important for us because it not only connects us with some of the South African companies that are active in exporting their expertise to the rest of the continent, but also it's brought together delegates from other countries and direct contact with them. I'm in the business development unit and deal origination unit, but as I go in country and I meet sovereigns, ministries of energy and finance and the like, and find out about the opportunities that exist for collaboration, it's very difficult for us to bring those transactions to fruition without, first of all, the interest of the buyer, which would be the country, and also the South African exporter. So this forum brings the people together so that by the time we're involved, we've already identified the synergies and the opportunities for collaboration. We've done several projects in Ghana. We covered the Ghana Rural Electrification Project, Send Power. We've done various mining projects as well. So some of them obviously are doing quite well, and in other situations we've paid out claims, which is really the main reason why the banks or the exporters come to the ECIC to cover their risk when they're going cross-border.
Yeah, but you deserve some commendations, isn't it? Because in terms of the rural electrification project, the connection to the national grid is above 70% now. Almost 80% now. The president of the country is giving assurances that by the end of this year, we want to do a complete 100% national grid connection. Is that an opportunity for you, and are you willing to work with the government of Ghana towards achieving it?
I think we are open to those conversations, and but as you can appreciate, when there are challenges with repayment, etc., we have to reconsider how the transaction is structured. So we do have other means of providing that support, but it will ultimately depend on the structuring of the project and who will be involved.
And speaking about repayments, it's been a challenge for many of the IPPs and those working in the energy space in Ghana. The cash waterfall mechanism has not been effective in raking back the investments that have been made, and now the economy is also in a very dire condition. How challenging has it been for many of you who've putting a lot of investment into the energy sector in Ghana? And are you willing to do more in the wake of this repayment challenges that you're faced with?
Yes, I mean, it has been challenging. And of course, when things don't go well, it not only has a waterfall effect just on that sector, it can go into other sectors, which makes it a little bit more difficult to do more business. And as you can also appreciate, as the ECIC, we do not provide any direct lending. So our participation and our involvement to a large extent will be determined by the financial institutions and whether or not they are willing to continue to lend.
And what feedback are they giving you based on their experience of what's happened with the rural electrification project, for instance?
Positive, because we do keep getting inquiries, but of course, when things don't go so well, projects just take a lot longer to get to a stage where they will reach funding, because obviously we try and implement lessons learned from the current situation, and it does take it a little bit longer for us to get going again, but everything is looked at on a case-by-case basis.
And it's not as though there's not been any success story. There has been, because
Send Power is doing very well.
You've done well with the rural electrification program, for instance, and that's also coming with its own new hurdle or challenge for Ghana, because then there'll be more demand for energy, which is why this forum is quite timely.
It is, and
What opportunities are you presenting to countries such as Ghana and others across the African continent to take advantage of?
I think for the rest of the continent, obviously, what has worked well is what opens doors. And we've had inquiries from other countries because they would have seen what worked well in other jurisdictions, and that's what kind of opens up for the new additional opportunities for us as well.
So, can I ask one thing? So basically, what you do is to give technical assistance and not funding. You don't give funding at all.
We do not provide any funding at all. We are providing political and commercial risk insurance. So what that means is that we wrap the transaction, and when a lender is funding into that deal, is effectively substituting the risk of that country, or host country, with that of South African government. So this enables financial institutions to extend their credit lines, because as you know, when entities are lending into a project, they will have credit limits assigned to a country and or type of transaction. So when we provide that cover, they're substituting that limit with that of South African government, so they can lend more. They can also lend at more attractive rates, and also tenors. It usually helps with tenors, especially if you're looking at the energy sector and infrastructure type of projects, and especially where sovereigns are involved. You find that your governments are not really lending up for 5-year short-term tenors. They want to go for extended tenors, and when we provide that wrap, it enables the lenders to extend their.
My final take on the credit rating bias. The United Nations Development Program is raising concerns about that when it comes to the risk appetite, which we were talking about earlier in Africa, it's not that high because of what they found out, that many of the ratings agencies are not being fair with how they assess, the economic risks across Africa. Is that of concern to you, and how do you navigate that work as you support more African countries?
So we are working alongside other export credit agencies, and there's a conventional credit rating that is applied. However, as the ECIC, we also do our own assessment. So we may not have the same credit ratings because we apply our own credit ratings due to our proximity and our relationships government to government on the continent.
Do you feel we need a uniform credit rating system so that it makes your work easier? Yeah.
Well, we already have uniform credit ratings, and I think
for Africa, I should think.
Well, we have multiple agencies, and as ECAs, we also follow one set of credit ratings. And as I said, for the ECIC, we also do our own assessment. I think, in my view, what's useful is to be able to assess on a case-by-case basis. So if we always followed the conventional rating, we wouldn't be able to do business in the countries that we do business. For a long time, for instance, Zimbabwe was closed to a lot of export credit agencies. But before Ghana, our largest exposure was actually in Zimbabwe. So we can look at, we can not disregard the ratings, take that into consideration, but also assess the nature of the transaction, how it's structured, and not penalize it for based on its country rating.
Just a quick question.
No, you mean.
Yeah, that's exactly this one.
Okay.
And I just wanted to know if there is something that you're currently doing in Kenya. If so, to what level? If not, why?
So Kenya is one of the countries that we are really keen to do more business. I think perhaps a few years ago, there was a transaction that we were looking at, port development, that we had expressed interest to cover. The government wanted an extended tenor, which we provided in our quotation, but unfortunately we couldn't get any financial institutions to match the tenor. there have been a few other inquiries. There's one that we're looking at the moment on the investment side, but we're still waiting for an application from the investor. I think what might limit the appetite is that, you know, with Kenya, there's a lot of other export credit agencies are open to do business there, and you find that it's quite competitive. So usually we might have restrictions, not because we do not want to do business there, but because they have other options and other takers. The other thing that we find as you go further away from the SADC region is that there's sometimes a challenge in the SA content. So, for instance, we can only support a transaction that has a minimum of at least 50% South African content if the project is on the continent. If it's outside of the continent, it's at least a minimum of 70% content. So we will have an inquiry, and it could be maybe a road or a toll road, but if the majority of the content, nobody's going to import tar or the like from South Africa. If you can get it locally, that sometimes hinders the minimum content requirement to enable us to support.
All right, so the same question Jamie asked, but this time we are looking at Nigeria.
Yes.
Is there anything you've been doing or anything you look at doing in the country?
So really exciting for us about Nigeria that we historically we've always done covered the export of capital goods and services. Then our shareholder, the DTIC, expanded our mandate, so we are now able to cover trade transactions. And what's exciting for us is we've executed 2 trade transactions with Access Bank, which for us is exciting because Access Bank, being a Nigerian bank, opened its doors in South Africa, and that was one of the first few transactions that we executed, and one of them was supporting trade into Nigeria. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
And your local content, does that include services?
Yes, absolutely. So we've had inquiries for, let's say, consultancy or engineering services, and we can cover that as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Very much.
Can I get your business card?